Picture this. You're in a crowded subway station. The train hasn't arrived yet, and everyone stands scattered along the platform. You glance at your phone, minding your own business. Suddenly, one person, without explanation, walks to the far end of the platform and stares at the ceiling. Another person notices, and they follow. Then another. Within a minute, half the platform is craning their necks upward. Do you keep scrolling on your phone? Or do you look up too? Most people would. Not because they suddenly believe something fascinating is on the ceiling, but because deep down, being the only one not looking feels wrong. That is the first taste of social proof. A force so subtle it doesn't scream, it whispers. A force so powerful it can bend even the strongest minds. And here's the shocking truth. You've been obeying this invisible string for years, long before you even knew it had a name. To understand why, we need to travel back thousands of years. Imagine yourself as a hunter in a prehistoric tribe. You're sharpening a spear when suddenly, every member of your tribe starts running toward the forest. Do you stay behind and ask questions? Or do you run with them? The answer is obvious. The cost of hesitation could be death. If everyone runs, it must mean danger. And if everyone gathers berries in one place, it must mean those berries are safe to eat. This instinct wasn't optional, it was survival. Those who ignored the tribe signals didn't live long enough to pass on their genes. Fast forward to today, and that same ancient code still lives inside your brain. Only now, it's not about survival in the wild. It's about survival in society. Instead of predators, you're avoiding embarrassment. Instead of poisonous berries, you're avoiding bad choices. But the instinct remains. Follow the group, stay safe. In the 1960s, a hidden camera experiment stunned the world. A man walked into an elevator. He faced the door like normal. Then 3 actors entered after him, and instead of facing the door, they all turned to face the back wall. What happened next was almost comical. The man looked confused. He glanced at them, then back at the door. He shifted nervously. Within seconds, he turned around and faced the wall too. No one said a word. No one forced him. But the silent pressure of social proof made him conform. That's how fragile our independence is. You think you're in control, but in reality you're like that man in the elevator, turning because everyone else did. Let's shift to something more familiar. You're on vacation in a new city, hungry and tired. You see 2 restaurants side by side. One is nearly empty, the other is buzzing, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Which do you choose? Most people step into the busy one without hesitation. But here's the trick. Sometimes those full restaurants hire people, fake customers, to sit, eat slowly, and create the illusion of popularity. It works because your brain doesn't say, maybe these are actors. It says, if so many people are here, it must be the right choice. This isn't just about food. This is how apps climb charts, how movies sell out, how clubs become hotspots overnight. Popularity doesn't always follow quality. Sometimes, it's manufactured. But once the illusion begins, the crowd makes it real. One of the most famous studies in psychology, the Asch conformity experiment, reveals just how deep this goes. Participants were asked to look at a line on one card and match it to one of 3 lines on another card. The answer was obvious. But here's the catch. The room was filled with actors who deliberately gave the wrong answer. At first, the real subject looked puzzled, maybe even laughed. But as the actors continued to agree on the wrong choice, something strange happened. The subject began to doubt their own eyes. And in most cases, they eventually joined the group, choosing the wrong answer simply because everyone else did. Think about that. They didn't just pretend. They genuinely questioned reality. That's the terrifying power of social proof. It can override your senses, your logic, even your identity. And it doesn't stop there. Imagine being in a workplace meeting. The boss presents a terrible idea. You see the flaws. You know it won't work. But as you glance around the room, every head nods in agreement. Your chest tightens. Should you speak up? If you do, you risk embarrassment, rejection, even punishment. If you stay silent, you're safe. And so, you stay silent. This is called pluralistic ignorance, when everyone privately doubts, but no one publicly disagrees. The result? Bad ideas spread like wildfire, because no one dares to be the lone voice. This is why entire organizations collapse, why crimes go unreported, why dangerous movements grow unchecked. The fear of standing alone is sometimes stronger than the fear of being wrong. Here's where it gets even more chilling. What if the crowd itself isn't real? In today's world, social proof can be bought. Likes, followers, reviews, applause, fabricated at the click of a button. A study once showed two identical videos online. One had 10 views, the other had 10,000. When asked which was more entertaining, people consistently rated the popular one higher, even though they were the same video. It didn't matter that the numbers were meaningless. The illusion of proof was enough. This is the weapon of modern manipulators. They don't need to persuade you directly. They just need to convince you that everyone else is already persuaded. And your brain, running on ancient code, falls in line. Now ask yourself, how many of your daily choices are really yours? The shoes you bought, the shows you binge, the slang you use, the celebrities you admire or despise. How many of these are rooted in your own judgment, and how many are echoes of the group? The uncomfortable truth is this: independence is rare. Most people are passengers, not drivers. They go where the crowd goes. They believe what the crowd believes. And the scariest part? They don't even realize it. Let me tell you a story that captures this perfectly. In 1985, a fire broke out in a London stadium packed with spectators. Smoke began to rise. People saw it, but almost no one moved. Why? Because when they looked around, they saw others sitting calmly. And so they too stayed calm. By the time panic finally spread, it was too late. Dozens of people lost their lives. Social proof didn't just delay their reaction, it cost them everything. And that's the danger. The very instinct designed to save us can, under the wrong circumstances, destroy us. So here's the chilling conclusion of this first chapter. Your brain doesn't always care about truth. Cares about belonging. Cares about safety in numbers. And because of that, it will happily trade logic for the comfort of the crowd. That is why social proof controls you more than reason. But we're only scratching the surface. Because if social proof can bend your choices in small ways, what cafe you pick, what video you watch, what happens when entire crowds are engineered to move in one direction? What happens when you're not just influenced but hijacked? That's where we're going next. Into the herd effect, the terrifying reality of what happens when the crowd doesn't just suggest, but commands. You've probably seen videos of stampedes. A fire alarm goes off in a mall, and suddenly hundreds of people rush toward the exits. Some trip, some scream, some push without mercy. But look closer, and you'll notice something strange. Many of the people running don't even know where the fire is. They aren't following logic. They're following legs. If everyone is running left, they run left. If the crowd surges right, they surge right. This is the herd effect. The terrifying reality that once enough bodies start moving, our sense of independence begins to collapse. We no longer ask, where should I go? We only ask, where is everyone else going? At first glance, it seems harmless. Safety in numbers. But under the surface lies a darker truth. The herd effect can hijack your decisions without permission, leading you into traps, mistakes, and even disasters you would never choose on your own. To see how dangerous it is, let's step back in time. In 2008, a tragic event unfolded at a Walmart on Black Friday. Doors were set to open early in the morning, and a massive crowd of shoppers gathered outside. As the doors opened, the crowd surged forward like a tidal wave. People fell. Screams erupted. Yet the pushing didn't stop. The herd had taken over. By the time the chaos settled, a store employee had been trampled to death, and dozens were injured. Ask yourself, how many of those people wanted to hurt anyone? None of them. But that's the terrifying thing about the herd. Once you're inside it, you're no longer just you. You're part of something larger, something mindless, something uncontrollable. Psychologists call this de-individuation, the loss of self-awareness in a crowd. Alone, you think. In a crowd, you follow. And in the heat of the moment, following feels safer than thinking. The herd effect isn't just physical. It's mental. Think of financial bubbles, where investors pile into markets not because they've done the math, but because everyone else is buying. In the 1600s, there was tulip mania in the Netherlands, where the price of tulip bulbs skyrocketed to insane levels. People were trading houses for a single bulb. Why? Because everyone else was doing it. And when the bubble burst, fortunes were wiped out overnight. Fast forward to modern times, and the same psychology fuels stock market crashes, cryptocurrency hype, and housing bubbles. People don't sit down and carefully calculate. They look at the herd. If the herd is rushing in, they don't want to be left behind. If the herd is rushing out, they don't want to be the last one standing. But the most haunting thing about the herd effect is how little it takes to trigger it. All you need is a few people to start moving, and the rest will follow. In one experiment, researchers placed a person on a busy street corner. The person simply tilted their head and stared at the sky. At first, passers-by ignored them, but soon another joined, then another. Within minutes, dozens of people were staring at nothing in the sky, convinced something must be there. This is how protests can swell from a handful to thousands. How rumors can ignite panic. How false alarms can turn into chaos. The herd doesn't need proof, it just needs momentum. There's another layer to this, one that feels even more unsettling. Once you're inside the herd, responsibility dissolves. If you push someone in a crowd, you don't feel like you pushed them. If you repeat a false rumor that everyone else is repeating, you don't feel guilty. The herd spreads accountability so thin that it almost disappears. This is why otherwise good people can get swept into riots, violence, and cruelty they would never commit alone. The crowd becomes both shield and weapon. But let's bring this closer to your everyday life. Social media is a digital herd. When you scroll and see a post with millions of likes, shares, or comments, your instinct is to pay attention. Not because the content is inherently better, but because the numbers tell your brain, everyone else is watching, don't miss out. The herd effect online is so strong that entire careers are built on it. Influencers rise not just because of talent or skill, but because once enough people start following, everyone else follows too. Think about trends that seemed ridiculous when they first appeared. Dance challenges, viral memes, danger stunts like the Tide Pod Challenge. Alone, most people would laugh them off. But when millions join in, suddenly it feels normal, even irresistible. The herd online can make nonsense feel like culture. And here's the truly dangerous twist. Herds can be manipulated. In politics, leaders know how to engineer momentum. They stage rallies where crowds are choreographed to chant, cheer, and wave signs. To outsiders watching on TV, it looks like overwhelming support. And the more people see it, the more they think, if the crowd believes, maybe I should too. Slowly, public opinion shifts, not because of careful reasoning, but because the herd already decided. Advertisers do the same thing. They show long lines outside stores on product launch days. They blast headlines like, "Sold out in minutes." The message is clear. Everyone else already wants this. Join the herd or be left behind. It doesn't matter if the product is truly valuable. The herd is the proof. But perhaps the most sinister use of the herd effect happens in cults and extremist groups. Leaders understand that individuals are fragile when isolated but unstoppable when absorbed into a collective. They use chants, rituals, group pressure, and shared identity to erase individuality. In the herd, members stop questioning. They stop doubting. They become part of a wave that will crash through anything in its path. Maybe you think you're immune. Maybe you believe you're too smart to follow the herd. But the truth is, no one is. Even the strongest minds can be hijacked by the right environment. Remember the fire in the stadium? People didn't move until others did. Remember the elevator experiment? The man turned simply because others turned. These weren't weak people. They were human. The question isn't whether you can resist the herd. The question is whether you'll even notice when you're inside one. Because the herd doesn't announce itself. Feels natural, even comforting. Feels like safety. And by the time you realize it's controlling you, it's often too late. Imagine standing in a crowded square when suddenly, people around you start pointing at the sky and gasping. You don't see anything. But more and more heads tilt upward, more and more gasps escape. Your heart rate quickens. You squint harder, and then your mind plays a trick on you. You convince yourself you see something too. That's the herd effect. Not just guiding your behavior, but rewriting your perception. Now stretch that out into every area of your life. The shows you binge, the products you buy, the opinions you hold. How many are shaped not by logic or truth, but by the gravitational pull of the crowd? The herd whispers in your ear, telling you it's safer to believe what others believe, safer to do what others do. And because of that whisper, billions of people live lives that are not entirely their own. The frightening reality is this: crowds can be weaponized. Once a herd is in motion, anyone who stands in its way is crushed. That's why dictators love parades, why companies love viral hype, why mobs love numbers. The herd is a tool, and those who understand how to control it can guide millions like cattle, often without them ever realizing it. So the next time you feel yourself swept up in a wave of excitement, outrage, or fear, pause for a second. Ask yourself, did I choose this? Or did the herd choose it for me? Because here's the truth most people don't want to face. The herd effect isn't rare. It's everywhere. It shapes your online feed, your shopping habits, your opinions, even your morality. You're living inside it every day. And unless you learn to see it, you'll never know where you end and the herd begins. But if the herd is this powerful, if it can override your independence and reshape reality itself, then what happens when that herd is combined with authority? What happens when the voice of the crowd isn't just a whisper, but comes packaged with uniforms, titles, and status symbols that make it impossible to resist? That's where we're heading next. Into a world where social proof puts on a disguise, where power and popularity merge into something even more dangerous. The crowd is strong, but when authority joins the crowd, the human mind doesn't just follow, it obeys. Imagine walking into a hospital waiting room. You're holding your arm, clearly in pain, but the receptionist is swamped and the wait is long. As you sit down, a man in a white coat walks past. He doesn't even look at you. He doesn't say a word, but somehow his presence calms you. You assume he knows what he's doing. You assume you're in good hands. Why? Because authority has a disguise. And when authority wears the mask of social proof, it becomes nearly impossible to resist. Think about it. A person in a uniform tells you where to stand. You stand. A man with a microphone tells you how to think. You nod. A woman with a large following tells you what to buy. You click add to cart. None of these people have proven themselves to you directly, yet their influence feels real, almost magnetic. This is the merging of two forces, social proof and authority. And when combined, they create one of the most powerful tools of persuasion ever discovered. To understand just how dangerous this is, let's revisit one of the most chilling experiments in psychology, the Milgram obedience study. In the 1960s, participants were brought into a lab and told they would help test the effects of punishment on learning. They were instructed to administer electric shocks to another person whenever that person answered a question incorrectly. The shock started small, but with each mistake, the voltage increased. The person being shocked wasn't actually a participant. They were an actor. But the real subjects didn't know that. As the shocks escalated, the actor began to scream, to beg for mercy, to pound on the wall. Eventually, they fell silent, pretending to be unconscious. And still, many participants continued to press the button. Why? Because a man in a lab coat calmly told them to. That lab coat was more than fabric. It was a symbol. It represented knowledge, legitimacy, authority. And when combined with the fact that others were following the instructions too, the effect was devastating. Social proof whispered, "Everyone else is obeying." Authority commanded, "You must obey too." Most participants thought of themselves as moral people. They walked into that lab believing they could never hurt an innocent stranger. But under the spell of authority in disguise, they did exactly that. This isn't just history. It's happening every day, all around you. Consider the world of advertising. When a product is labeled doctor recommended or approved by experts, we believe it more, not because we've checked the credentials, Not because we've verified the science, but because authority is being used as a form of social proof. If someone with a title believes in it, we feel safer believing too. It goes even deeper. Think of celebrities. An actor promotes a skincare brand. A musician promotes sneakers. A social media influencer promotes supplements. Do they have actual expertise in these areas? Of course not. But their fame gives them the aura of authority. And because millions of followers already trust them, that social proof blends with authority until it feels almost impossible to resist. Nowhere is this more dangerous than in politics. Leaders don't just speak with authority, they surround themselves with crowds. To amplify it, speeches are delivered to cheering audiences. Policies are announced with banners that scream, "Majority support." The message is clear. Not only is this leader powerful, but everyone else already agrees. Authority in disguise. Social proof masquerading as truth. And once that disguise is in place, people don't just listen, they obey. But let's zoom in to something smaller, something personal. Imagine you're scrolling online and you see an article shared thousands of times. It claims something shocking. A new miracle cure, a breaking scandal, a controversial fact. The headline is outrageous, but the shares are real. Then you notice a few comments saying, "I saw this on the news too," or "My doctor mentioned this." Instantly, authority blends with popularity. Without realizing it, you feel more certain it must be true. You don't question the details. You don't double-check the sources. You trust the disguise. This is how misinformation spreads. Not because people are stupid, but because their brains are wired to trust crowds and symbols of authority. When those two align, even lies feel like reality. There's another layer to this, something even more insidious. Authority doesn't always come dressed as a leader or expert. Sometimes it hides inside ordinary people. A group of strangers starts crossing the street against the light. You hesitate, but then you notice one person leading the way confidently without looking back. You assume they know what they're doing. You follow. That person wasn't a leader in any official sense, but their confidence gave them the appearance of authority. Confidence itself is a kind of costume. Studies show that when people speak with certainty, others assume they must be right, even if they're completely wrong. And when multiple people echo that certainty, the effect multiplies. Authority in disguise doesn't just live in titles. It lives in tone, posture, numbers, and presentation. And here's the chilling part. Once authority and social proof combine, resistance feels dangerous. If a single person disagrees with a leader backed by a cheering crowd, they risk isolation, humiliation, even punishment. Think of whistleblowers silenced by companies, citizens silenced by governments, children silenced by parents. The authority provides the command. The crowd provides the reinforcement. Together, they crush dissent. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. In 1978, a man named Jim Jones led over 900 of his followers to a commune in Guyana, South America. He called it Jonestown. His followers believed he was a prophet, a savior. He dressed the part. He preached with authority. And around him was a sea of people who cheered, clapped, and reinforced every word. Authority disguised as truth. Social proof disguised as faith. When the community faced outside pressure, Jones ordered his followers to drink a poison-laced beverage. Mothers gave it to their children. Families drank together. Hundreds died in what became known as the Jonestown Massacre. To outsiders, it seemed unimaginable. But inside the bubble of authority and social proof, it felt like obedience, loyalty, even righteousness. That's the extreme end of this psychological trap. But the same mechanism plays out in smaller, quieter ways all the time. A boss suggests a bad strategy, and no one speaks up. A teacher makes a false statement, and students repeat it. A charismatic friend insists on a belief, and the group nods along. These moments don't make headlines, but they shape our lives every day. So why is this so effective? Because your brain is built to seek certainty. Life is overwhelming, decisions are endless, and authority, especially when backed by others, offers relief. Tells you what to do, tells you what to believe, and most of the time, Obeying feels easier than resisting. But here's the trap. Authority in disguise doesn't always lead you toward truth. Sometimes it leads you straight into manipulation. And once you're there, you may not even realize it because the crowd around you makes it feel normal. The real question is this: how many of your beliefs are truly yours? And how many were whispered into your mind by a leader, an influencer, or a stranger who wore the mask of authority and carried the proof of the crowd? Think about the brands you trust, the headlines you share, the experts you quote. Did you verify them yourself? Or did you simply inherit them because they looked official and everyone else already believed? This is the invisible hand of authority in disguise. It doesn't shove you. It doesn't scream. It simply stands tall, backed by a crowd, and lets your brain do the rest. Now here's where it gets even darker. If social proof can bend your choices, and authority can disguise itself as truth, what happens when smaller triggers, likes, follows, fake reviews, are weaponized against you every single day? What happens when your brain is trained to respond, not to facts, but to digital numbers engineered to control your attention? That's where we're heading next, into the subtle triggers that shape your reality without you even noticing, into a world where fake popularity feels just as powerful as the real thing. Picture this. You unlock your phone, swipe to your favorite app, and the first thing you see is a little red dot, a notification. Maybe it's a like, maybe it's a new follower, maybe it's a share. That tiny signal lights up your brain like a spark. You feel seen, validated, pulled in. Now imagine scrolling through two posts side by side. One has 5 likes, the other has 50,000. Be honest. Which one feels more important? Which one are you more likely to click? Which one are you more likely to share? It's not even a contest. Your brain gravitates to the one with the higher numbers. Not because you sat down and weighed the content carefully. Not because you confirmed its truth. But because the numbers themselves are social proof. They whisper, everyone else thinks this matters, so you should too. This is the subtle trick of modern social platforms. They don't just connect you. They train you. Every heart, every thumbs up, every follower count is a tiny hook. Alone, one doesn't mean much, but together, they form an invisible net around your attention. And here's the part no one likes to admit. Those numbers don't even need to be real. Consider fake followers. Entire industries exist to sell them. For a few dollars, anyone can inflate their profile overnight. Thousands of accounts, sometimes bots, sometimes empty shells, flood in to make someone look popular. And the shocking thing? It works. Because your brain doesn't check if the crowd is authentic. It only checks if the crowd is big. Think about it. You stumble across 2 new Instagram profiles. One has 200 followers. The other has 200,000. Which one feels more trustworthy? Which one feels more valuable? The second one, of course. Even if half those followers are fake, the illusion is enough to sway your judgment. That's the dark genius of fake popularity. It doesn't just fool algorithms. It fools human psychology. Now let's step into a more familiar scenario. You're on YouTube searching for a tutorial. 2 videos pop up. Both claim to teach the exact same thing. One has 300 views. The other has 3 million. Which one do you click? The one with millions, obviously. You don't even think twice. But here's the sinister twist. View counts can be manipulated too. Bot farms, paid promotions, artificial boosts. These tricks make content look more watched than it really is. And once it looks popular, real people pour in, turning the illusion into reality. This is the cycle of subtle triggers. Fake numbers create the illusion of popularity. The illusion attracts real attention. Real attention creates more numbers. And soon, no one remembers that it all started with smoke and mirrors. But this doesn't just apply to social media. Look at online shopping. Ever noticed how some products on Amazon have thousands of glowing reviews? Many of those reviews are fake. Written by bots. Paid for by sellers. Entire companies specialize in manufacturing 5-star praise. And when you see those numbers, you don't dig into the details. You don't check if the reviewers are real. You just trust the proof. This is how millions of people are tricked into buying low-quality products, scams, and knockoffs. Not because the product convinced them, but because the numbers did. The brain loves shortcuts, and numbers are the easiest shortcut of all. 5 likes feels weak. 50,000 likes feels strong. 100 followers feels lonely. 1,000,000 followers feels magnetic. Your mind doesn't ask why. It just reacts. And here's where it gets darker. Social media platforms know this. They've designed their systems around these subtle triggers. Every red dot, every notification, every view count is carefully engineered to keep you hooked. The companies know that your brain equates numbers with proof, and proof with truth. They exploit that instinct to keep you scrolling, clicking, consuming. But here's the chilling question. If numbers can be faked, if popularity can be manufactured, how do you know what's real anymore? Think of viral trends. Sometimes they explode naturally, but sometimes they're seeded. A company pays influencers to join a challenge. Fake accounts flood in with likes and shares. Suddenly, it looks like everyone's doing it. You join too. By the time you realize it was marketing, the herd has already taken over. What started as manipulation now feels like culture. And the subtle triggers don't just affect what you consume. They affect how you behave. Imagine posting a photo that gets almost no likes. How do you feel? Embarrassed? Ashamed? Maybe you even delete it. Now imagine posting one that explodes with attention. You feel proud, validated, unstoppable. That difference in numbers doesn't just affect your mood. It shapes your identity. You start chasing the triggers. You post what you think will get likes. You follow trends you don't care about. You censor yourself, reshape yourself, all to please an algorithm that rewards you with digital approval. Over time, the line between who you are and who the numbers want you to be starts to blur. That's not just influence. That's control. But let's make this even scarier. What happens when subtle triggers are weaponized for persuasion, not just engagement? Imagine a political post boosted with thousands of fake shares. Suddenly it looks like public opinion is leaning one way. You feel pressure to agree because it feels like everyone else already does. Or imagine misinformation about health, vaccines, or safety getting artificially inflated. Once the numbers are high enough, truth doesn't matter. The illusion of proof becomes the new reality. This is happening right now, every day. Companies use fake reviews to dominate markets. Politicians use inflated engagement to sway voters. Influencers buy fake clout to land real deals. And behind it all is the same ancient code in your brain. The need to follow the crowd, the instinct to trust the big numbers. Think of it like a magician's trick. The magician doesn't show you the mechanics. They show you the illusion. You know magic isn't real, but your eyes still believe. In the same way, you know fake followers exist, you know reviews can be manipulated, but when you see the numbers stacked high, your brain still believes. And that's the genius of subtle triggers. They bypass logic. They bypass skepticism. They don't shout. They whisper. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already convinced. So ask yourself this. How many of your choices were shaped by numbers on a screen? The shows you watched because they had millions of views. The products you bought because they had thousands of reviews. The influencers you followed because they already had a massive following. Were those decisions really yours? Or were they guided by subtle triggers designed to make you obey without question? Now imagine what happens when these triggers are combined with something even more powerful. Scarcity. When the numbers don't just show popularity, but urgency. When you're told not only that everyone else wants it, but that it might disappear if you don't act now. That's when social proof transforms from subtle pressure into irresistible force. And that's exactly where we're going next. Into the world where scarcity meets proof, and desire becomes almost impossible to resist. Imagine walking down a street lined with shops. In one display window, you see a bold red sign that says, "Bestseller, everyone's buying." Even if you weren't planning to step inside, something in your chest tightens. Scarcity tells you time is running out. Social proof tells you you're already behind. Together, they form a psychological trap so powerful, even the most rational person struggles to escape. This is the collision point between two ancient instincts. The fear of missing out and the fear of being left behind. And when marketers, manipulators, and influencers combine them, they don't just nudge you toward action, they shove you headfirst. Let's rewind to your ancestors again. Picture yourself in a prehistoric village. Food is limited. Shelter is limited. Opportunities for survival are scarce. If the tribe rushes toward a patch of fruit trees, what do? You run too, because scarcity means danger. Scarcity means opportunity. And if everyone else is already grabbing, you know hesitation equals loss. Fast forward to today, and the brain hasn't changed. That same survival instinct is triggered when you see a countdown timer on a shopping site, when you're told a deal expires at midnight, or when you hear about tickets selling fast. Scarcity screams, act now or lose everything. Social proof whispers, everyone else already acted. Together, they override logic and push you to make decisions you might not otherwise make. Take the Black Friday phenomenon. People camp outside stores. They stampede when doors open. They grab items they never planned to buy. Why? Because scarcity and proof fuse together in the chaos. Limited stock, massive crowds, everyone lunging at products. The rational mind shuts down. All that remains is fear. Fear of being the one left empty-handed while everyone else wins. Or consider concert tickets. A band announces a tour. Within hours, social media lights up with people bragging about securing seats. Ticket sites flash warnings. Only a few tickets left. Even if you weren't planning to go, a panic rises inside you. What if this is your last chance? What if everyone else gets to experience it while you're left out? Suddenly, you're racing against the clock, typing in your credit card number before the timer hits 0. The genius of this tactic is that it doesn't need to be true. Scarcity can be manufactured. Limited editions aren't always limited. Only a few tickets left may refresh magically once those seats are gone. But it doesn't matter. Your brain doesn't wait to fact-check. It reacts instantly because loss feels worse than gain. Psychologists call this loss aversion. Studies show that losing 100 feels twice as painful as gaining 100 feels pleasurable. That imbalance makes scarcity incredibly persuasive. The thought of missing out on something valuable, whether or not it's truly valuable, creates anxiety strong enough to override patience and reason. Now add social proof to the mix. Think of fashion drops. A brand releases a new sneaker. Celebrities post photos wearing it. Influencers flood Instagram with unboxing videos. Within hours, the sneakers sell out. Thousands who never cared before suddenly want them because everyone else wanted them first. Scarcity tells them, they're gone. Social proof tells them, and everyone else already owns them. The result? Frenzied resale markets where people pay triple the price just to catch up. But it's not just products. Scarcity and proof shape ideas too. Consider viral challenges. They explode across platforms, and within days it feels like the whole world is participating. Videos flood in. Hashtags climb trends. If you don't join, you feel left behind. Scarcity here isn't about a physical item. It's about time. Trends vanish quickly. If you don't act now, you'll miss your chance to be part of the wave. And because everyone else already joined, you feel even more pressure. This is why social media feels so addictive. Every viral moment is framed as scarce. Limited time relevance, limited visibility, limited cultural currency. Combine that with proof. Millions of people liking, sharing, participating, and you're caught in a cycle that feels impossible to resist. The dark part? Scarcity and proof don't just make you buy or click. They make you compromise. Think of cults or extremist groups. They frame membership as rare, exclusive, reserved only for a chosen few. Scarcity tells you, this is special. Then, as you look around and see others proudly belonging, social proof whispers, you should belong too. Suddenly, people surrender freedoms, money, even their lives, all under the twin pressures of scarcity and proof. One of the most haunting examples of this happened in Jonestown, the same tragic event we touched on earlier. Followers of Jim Jones weren't just manipulated by authority. They were told they were part of a rare, chosen community. Belonging was scarce. Outsiders didn't understand. And inside, The sight of hundreds already obeying created unbearable pressure to obey too. The result was catastrophic. Scarcity of belonging, proof of loyalty, together a deadly mix. But let's pull back to the everyday world again. Look at online dating apps. Profiles flash phrases like, 1,000 people swiped right on this person today. Scarcity. They're in high demand, you might lose your chance. Proof. Everyone else already approves. The combination pushes you to act, even if you weren't interested before. Or look at job postings. Ever notice listings that say hundreds have already applied? Scarcity. Positions are limited. Proof. Everyone else thinks this job is worth chasing. Even if the role isn't perfect, you feel pressure to throw your hat in the ring. Because missing out feels worse than making the wrong choice. And here's where it gets truly dangerous. These tactics don't just manipulate your wallet, they manipulate your identity. When you constantly respond to scarcity and proof, you start shaping your life around what others value, not what you value. You buy clothes you don't like just to fit in. You attend events you don't care about just to belong. You adopt opinions you don't fully believe just to avoid being left behind. The cage isn't physical, it's psychological, and the bars are built from numbers, urgency, and crowds. So how do you resist? The truth is, it's not easy. These forces are ancient. They tap into survival instincts you can't shut off. But the first step is awareness. The moment you see a limited time offer or a bestseller tag, pause. Ask yourself, is this urgency real? Do I want this because I value it? Or because I'm afraid of missing out? That single moment of reflection can break the automatic spell. But awareness alone won't protect you, because there's another level of manipulation waiting. What happens when the crowd you're following isn't real at all? What happens when the people influencing you aren't even human? That's where we're heading next. Into the chilling world of artificial crowds, bots, and invisible armies that shape your reality without you knowing it. Imagine this. You walk into a nightclub late at night. A long line snakes down the street, people shivering in the cold, eager to get inside. You assume the place must be incredible. Why else would so many people wait? But what you don't realize is that half the line is staged. Paid actors standing there for one purpose: to make the club look popular. You finally get inside, and the truth hits you. It's just another room with flashing lights and overpriced drinks. But it doesn't matter. The illusion already worked. You gave your time, your money, and your attention. That's dark persuasion. Because social proof isn't just a quirk of psychology. In the hands of skilled manipulators, it becomes a weapon. And the scary part? You may not even know it's being used on you. Let's peel back the curtain. Manipulators understand one simple truth. People don't like making decisions alone. They crave certainty. They crave safety in numbers. So if you can manufacture the appearance of consensus, you don't need to argue, explain, or prove. You just let the crowd do the heavy lifting. One of the oldest tricks in the book is the applause sign. Picture a live TV show. The host cracks a mediocre joke, and suddenly the room erupts in laughter. You chuckle too. Not because it was funny, but because everyone else is laughing. What you don't see are the flashing lights above the cameras signaling the audience to clap and cheer. Manufactured proof. Engineered laughter. And without realizing it, you join in. That's the power of cues. Manipulators don't need a real crowd. They just need you to believe there is one. Think about infomercials. A product flashes on screen, followed by clips of ordinary people raving about how it changed their lives. I lost weight in 2 weeks. I saved hundreds of dollars. This really works. Deep down, these testimonials might be scripted. But your brain doesn't analyze each claim. It notices the volume. One person praising the product might be suspicious. 10 people feels convincing. 20 feels undeniable. This is the principle of plurality. The more voices you hear saying the same thing, the more your brain interprets it as truth. And manipulators exploit this relentlessly. Fake reviews on shopping sites, inflated star ratings, bot armies boosting comments. They know you're not likely to verify every source. You'll just assume that if everyone agrees, it must be right. Now let's go darker. Political manipulators use the same trick, but on a massive scale. They fill stadiums with cheering supporters. They flood social media with messages from fake accounts. They buy headlines, pay influencers, stage rallies. The point isn't persuasion through logic. It's persuasion through pressure. When you see a leader standing tall before a roaring crowd, your brain concludes, they must be powerful. They must be right. Look how many people already believe. But here's the sinister twist. Crowds don't just change how you think, they change how you behave. Manipulators know that once you feel outnumbered, you're less likely to resist. A scammer who tells you, most of my clients have already signed, is pushing you to join the herd. A cult leader who says, everyone else here has already made the sacrifice, is daring you to stand apart. And standing apart feels like social death. The real danger comes when manipulators combine social proof with urgency. Imagine an online scheme that says, hundreds of people have already invested. Spots are filling fast. Proof tells you others already trust it. Scarcity tells you you'll lose if you don't act. Together, they bypass skepticism and make you rush into traps. This is how Ponzi schemes survive. Early investors are paraded as proof. Look how much money they made, while new recruits feel pressured to join before the chance disappears. By the time the scheme collapses, it's too late. The illusion of proof was enough to keep the cycle spinning. Even in everyday sales, you see the weapon at work. A website says, people are viewing this item right now. Or, someone in your area just booked this hotel. You feel the pressure. Proof, others want it. Persuasion, you'd better want it too. But the numbers flashing on your screen, they may be fake. Pure code, manufactured urgency, and yet your pulse quickens as if it's real. Manipulators also understand the role of isolation. When you're surrounded by a group that unanimously supports an idea, it feels impossible to disagree. This is called groupthink, and it's one of the deadliest forms of social proof. In organizations, it leads to catastrophic decisions. In relationships, it leads to abuse. In cults, it leads to tragedy. The manipulator doesn't need to silence you directly. The crowd does it for them. A chilling example comes from advertising again. Decades ago, cigarette companies hired actors dressed as doctors to endorse smoking. They ran ads showing groups of physicians claiming, more doctors smoke this brand than any other. Was it true? Not at all. But the image of white coats and unanimous voices was enough to convince millions. Social proof weaponized, authority disguised, and society paid the price in addiction, disease, and death. The question is, why does this weapon work so well? Because it doesn't feel like persuasion. It feels like reality. When you see a crowd moving, your brain doesn't say, I'm being manipulated. It says, this is the truth. This is the norm. Manipulators hide behind that illusion. They don't convince you directly, they let the crowd do it for them. But there's another layer. Skilled manipulators don't just use real crowds, they create fake ones. Thousands of bots commenting the same message. Dozens of fake profiles repeating the same story. When you scroll through and see the same opinion echoed again and again, you don't stop to check if it's real. You just absorb it. And soon, you find yourself repeating it too. That's the terrifying brilliance of dark persuasion. It doesn't need to win your logic. It just needs to overwhelm your senses. So here's the uncomfortable truth. The next time you feel pulled toward a choice because everyone else already made it, you may not be following a real crowd at all. You may be following a phantom, a constructed illusion designed to lead you exactly where someone wants you to go. And the manipulators don't care if you're happy once you get there. They only care that you followed. But here's the chilling thought. What if the illusion of the crowd isn't just online, but everywhere? What if your reality itself is being engineered by invisible hands, shaping not just what you buy but what you believe? That's where we're heading next. Into the unsettling world of manufactured realities, where entire environments are staged to keep you in line. You wake up, rub your eyes, and reach for your phone. Before you've even had coffee, 100 tiny windows of persuasion are already at work. A sponsored post promises a miracle product. A news alert flashes a scandalous headline. An influencer you follow posts a short clip raving about a life-changing gadget. You scroll, you skim, you react, and somewhere between the ads and the headlines, your mind is being shaped by 1,000 small proof cues you barely notice. It's not random. It's a designed environment. The world you live in is a maze of nudges, hints, and staged consensus. Advertisers, political operatives, and media strategists have long understood one simple rule. People trust what looks trusted. Show them a crowd, a testimonial, a headline framed as fact, and most will accept it without digging for truth. That's the dirty secret. Public opinion can be manufactured the same way a product's popularity can be manufactured. The tools are different: painstaking A/B tests, targeted ads, and sophisticated narrative framing, but the effect is the same. People see proof and they follow. Think about a commercial you can't forget. It might not have been the product that hooked you. It was the scene. A family laughing, a montage of happy faces, someone wiping away a tear of joy. Those faces are social proof in motion. They tell your brain that this product brings belonging, happiness, acceptance. The message is simple and catastrophic in its power. If people like them are happy with this, you will be too. Behind the camera, teams studied which images create trust, which music conjures nostalgia, which ages and fashions trigger aspiration. Nothing is accidental. Now imagine the same tactic applied to news. A headline requires a click, a share, a reaction. Editors and producers know that big numbers create perceived importance. So they craft provocative language and push it to audiences most likely to respond. When you see a story trending with thousands of shares, your brain registers social proof. Many people think this matters, so maybe it matters to you too. Repetition from multiple outlets, each echoing the same narrative, reinforces the signal until the idea feels incontestable. Even after the story unravels, the first impression lingers. That's how reputations are built and reputations are destroyed. Through volume, echo, and relentless repetition. Politics has always been theater, but the modern stage is digital and hyper-targeted. Campaigns spend millions staging photo ops, orchestrating chants, and broadcasting crowds so their supporters appear overwhelming. When a speech is framed between shots of cheering masses, the visual proof says more than the words. It signals momentum. People are joining, others should join too. Outside the rally, digital teams seed talking points across forums, amplify supportive posts with paid ads, and quietly drown dissenting voices in waves of coordinated messaging. Voters who see repeated proof of support can be nudged into believing a candidate is the obvious choice, not because of policies, but because of perceived popularity. It's an emotional shortcut. Voting becomes about belonging rather than evaluation. Advertising learned long ago that testimonials work because they replace argument with story. A stranger on the screen says, "This saved my life," and the barrage of social proof begins. Testimonials are framed carefully. A relatable person, a believable struggle, a satisfying transformation. The more voices that echo the same miracle, the less likely you are to ask how valid those voices are. Reviews pile up, 5-star ratings multiply, and trust accrues like interest. You don't check each review, you let the pile do your thinking. But this pile can be faked. Entire economies of fake reviews exist to seed credibility. You might buy a product after seeing thousands of glowing reviews that were written by people paid a few dollars per post or by automated scripts. The proof looks real and your brain doesn't audit it. It simply accepts the consensus as a shortcut to decision-making. That's the ruthless efficiency of a world where attention equals currency. The media environment, too, loves proof. Sensationalism is the grease that keeps the machine running. A scandal framed as everyone's talking about it becomes sticky. A rumor given the stage of repeated reporting becomes truth to those who only saw the headlines. Anchors and pundits drive the drumbeat while social platforms amplify the rhythm. Audiences, hungry for certainty in a complex world, conflate frequency with accuracy. The louder the echo, the more real the echo seems. There are craftier examples. Consider advertorials, ads dressed as journalism. The layout is the same, the tone is the same, but the purpose is different. When an ad uses the trappings of authentic reporting, quotes, imagery, expert-sounding language, viewers grant it the trust usually reserved for impartial news. In the mind, the authority of the medium bleeds into the message. Advertisers use the cloak of credibility to wrap their product in social proof. Then there are PR stunts that intentionally manufacture media coverage. A celebrity randomly discovered a product and raved about it on camera. The brand circulates the clip. Influencers repost it. News outlets pick up the story, sometimes reframing it without disclosing the brand's role. Suddenly, mass awareness looks organic even though the narrative was seeded. You witness the birth of perceived truth. A story that started as marketing becomes a cultural moment simply because enough people were directed to believe it. Political manipulation leverages the same techniques but with higher stakes. Deepfakes, coordinated bot networks, and micro-targeted propaganda can create the illusion of widespread sentiment. A false quote attributed to a public figure, amplified by pages of automated accounts, becomes accepted by those only seeing the echo. Repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity breeds acceptance. It's not necessary that everyone sees the fabrication. It's sufficient that enough do, and enough of those signalers are visible to others. The perceived consensus can swing opinions, sway undecideds, and polarize the public. Media ecosystems also profit from outrage. Content that triggers emotional reactions. Fear, disgust, rage, propels itself through networks faster than rational analysis ever can. Outrage is social glue. When others react with fury, you feel the pull to react too. That reaction is social proof in action. You see others' outrage and assume the subject deserves it. This is how smear campaigns spread. Plant a claim, agitate it, let the outrage show, and then watch as the crowd seals the verdict. Evidence becomes secondary to emotion. Advertising and political persuasion are not the only culprits. Corporate storytelling and branding operate on the same principle of hidden proof. Companies hire teams to sculpt narratives that seem authentic, sustainability pledges, heartfelt CEO testimonials, crafted philanthropy. When consumers see multiple brands doing the same, social proof reassures them. If so many companies talk this way, it must be the right thing to support. The more signals of corporate virtue pile up, the easier it is for consumers to outsource moral judgment, choosing brands that look responsible rather than brands that actually are. Even journalism itself can become a vector for manufactured consensus when norms break down. Sensational headlines are catchy, but nuance gets buried. Editors chase clicks, not clarity, and the resulting headlines are often simplified into tidy narratives. Too many outlets repeating the same simplified story creates a feedback loop. Readers assume broad agreement because they see the same claim everywhere. The repetition feels like proof, but it's sometimes just the same draft reprinted in different fonts. The subtlety and the danger lie in how seamlessly this all blends into everyday life. Your friend shares a viral article. Your coworker forwards a thread. Your neighbor posts a heartfelt testimonial about a dietary supplement. These don't feel like manipulation, they feel like social proof in its purest, most honest form. But as you accept these pieces into your world, you're also importing the cues that built them. Staged images, amplified metrics, curated testimonies. Your mental shortcuts latch on. You start to accept the presented reality because enough people appear to endorse it. If you step back and watch the machinery for a while, a pattern emerges. First, a narrative is created, sometimes by marketers, sometimes by political actors, sometimes by enterprising PR people. Second, that narrative is amplified through paid channels and networks of willing sharers. Third, visible proof accumulates, shares, likes, testimonials, and third parties pick up on the story. Finally, the public internalizes the message as truth. The process is methodical and effective because it doesn't require absolute truth. It only requires perceived consensus. You could be forgiven for thinking this sounds cynical, that perhaps you're simply being paranoid. But consider this: every major decision in modern life, from choosing a doctor to picking a political candidate, is influenced by signals of social validation. We rely on ratings, endorsements, and trending lists because we cannot verify everything ourselves. That's not a flaw. It's a necessary adaptation to complexity. The problem arises when those signals are contrived. So how do you protect yourself? Start by slowing your intake. Notice when a claim arrives wrapped in loud proof, an avalanche of shares, a row of glowing testimonials, a headline framed as an indisputable fact. Ask where the proof actually comes from. Who benefits if you accept this as true? What incentives were in play when this message was amplified? Replace passive acceptance with a question. Is the proof authentic, or is it a staged performance? Another tactic is to look for independent corroboration. If a story is real and important, reliable outlets or diverse sources will confirm it without relying on the same seed material. A single viral clip is suspect. 3 independent confirmations are not. Train yourself to spot the difference between amplification and validation. Finally, remember that exposure does not equal truth. Popularity is a signal, not a verdict. Just because a headline trends does not mean it's accurate. Just because a product has 100 5-star reviews does not mean it's flawless. The crowd can be right, but it can also be bought, tricked, or staged. The world of ads, politics, and media is a maze of hollow proofs and engineered consensus. They know you trust patterns, they know you seek shortcuts. They build illusions, amplify them, and let humanity's deep need to belong complete the rest. Knowing this doesn't make you immune, but it gives you a moment of power. The ability to pause, to question, to refuse the automatic assent that social proof tries to extract from you. And once you learn to question the proof, you begin to see how everything around you is shaped, not by random truth, but by deliberate design. That's when the real work starts. Reclaiming your attention, your judgment, and, slowly, your independence. You're sitting in a crowded restaurant, staring at the menu. 10 people around you have ordered the same dish. You glance at the waiter. Your brain whispers, just order what they ordered. Don't risk something else. That whisper is social proof, tugging at you like invisible strings. But what if, just for once, you caught the whisper mid-sentence? What if you could pause, tilt your head, and ask yourself, do I even want that dish? Or am I just afraid to be the odd one out? That pause, that single second of awareness, is the first crack in the trap. And once you see the strings, you can start cutting them. The truth is, social proof will never vanish. It's baked into the human experience. You will always feel its pull, whether it's a flashing sale sign, a viral trend, or a room full of people clapping at something you don't quite agree with. But you're not helpless. You can build psychological shields, habits, mindsets, and mental tricks that give you space to choose, even when the crowd screams otherwise. The first shield is slowing the reflex. Social proof works because it's fast. The brain evolved to react quickly. If the tribe ran, you ran. Hesitation could kill you. Today, hesitation won't kill you. But acting too quickly might cost you money, beliefs, or freedom. So train yourself to delay. When you feel that sudden pull, by now, act fast. Everyone's doing it. Force a pause. 10 seconds. 10 breaths. This microscopic delay interrupts the autopilot. And in that small pocket of time, logic has a chance to wake up. Consider an online flash sale. A timer counts down. Only 5 minutes left. Your chest tightens, your fingers hover over the checkout button. Instead of rushing, say aloud, if this were truly valuable, would I still want it tomorrow? This simple question is a shield. It reframes the decision from panic to perspective. Often, the desire evaporates as quickly as it came. The second shield is questioning the crowd. Ask yourself, who makes up this crowd? If you see thousands of glowing reviews for a product, pause. Are they real people or bots? If a politician boasts about massive support, ask, who benefits from me believing this? Crowds can be faked, staged, bought, but your brain won't notice unless you ask. Doubt isn't weakness, it's armor. The third shield is anchoring to your values. Manipulation works best when you don't know what you truly want. If you're drifting, the crowd will decide for you. But if you know your values, health, freedom, honesty, creativity, you can measure the crowd against them. When everyone around you is chasing the latest gadget, you can ask, does this align with what matters to me? Or am I just following noise? Your values become your compass. The stronger the compass, the harder it is for manipulators to steer you off course. Take cult recruitment. People don't join cults because they crave control. They join because they crave belonging. Social proof tells them, look at all these happy, united people. You could be one of them. But those who anchor to personal values, autonomy, truth, critical thought, feel friction instead of seduction. That friction is a warning signal. This belonging comes at too high a price. The fourth shield is reverse proof. Instead of asking, what is everyone else doing? Ask, what would happen if I did the opposite? This mental trick flips the script. If everyone is rushing to buy, consider waiting. If everyone is silent in a meeting, consider speaking. Sometimes the crowd is right, but often the crowd is lazy. By practicing contrarian thinking, you expose hidden options the crowd is blind to. There's a famous story of Warren Buffett walking into a room filled with panicked investors selling their stocks. Instead of joining the stampede, he asked himself, what happens if I don't follow? He bought instead of sold. That contrarian instinct, choosing against the wave, is why he became one of the richest men alive. Reverse proof can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. The fifth shield is information hygiene. Manipulators thrive on noise. The more headlines, ads, and viral posts you consume uncritically, the easier it is to hijack your instincts. So curate your inputs. Unfollow accounts that feed you constant proof signals without substance. Diversify your news sources. Limit exposure to outrage-driven content. When you control the stream, you control the signals. It's not about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about choosing which voices get to whisper in your ear. The sixth shield is the inner circle. Crowds manipulate, but trusted individuals ground you. When you feel pulled by a mass of strangers, turn instead to a small circle of people you respect. Ask them, does this make sense? Am I being swept up? The echo chamber of strangers can be broken by the sanity of a friend. Cult survivors often say the hardest step was talking to someone outside the group. But once they did, the illusion shattered. The seventh shield is awareness of emotional spikes. Social proof loves emotion. Fear of missing out, desire for belonging, panic over scarcity. The next time you feel a sudden rush of fear or desire tied to what others are doing, pause and name it. This is FOMO. This is fear. This is desire to fit in. Naming the emotion turns it from master into signal. You stop being the puppet and start being the puppeteer. And the eighth shield is mental rehearsal. Just like athletes rehearse plays in their minds, you can rehearse resisting proof. Imagine a scenario. A salesman says, everyone else has signed up. Why haven't you? Instead of freezing, you rehearse saying, that's great for them, but I decide based on my needs. By practicing resistance in low-stakes moments, you build strength for high-stakes ones. But here's the hardest truth. Using these shields will make you uncomfortable. You will stand apart. You will risk being the lone person not clapping, the lone voice asking a question, the lone buyer who says no. That discomfort is the price of freedom. Manipulators rely on your fear of isolation. Break that fear and their power weakens. Think back to the Ash conformity experiment, the one where participants agreed with the wrong answer just to blend in. A few resisted. They didn't shout, they didn't argue, they simply said, no, I see it differently. Those few voices were not just free themselves. They gave permission for others to resist too. Shielding yourself isn't just self-defense, it's leadership. Your resistance can ripple. Because here's the paradox. Crowds are powerful, but they are also fragile. They gain strength from silence and submission. When even one person resists, cracks appear. When more resist, the crowd's illusion shatters. Manipulators know this. That's why they fight so hard to silence dissent. And that brings us to the final shield, courage. Not the Hollywood kind with explosions and speeches. The quiet kind. The courage to pause when others rush. The courage to question when others nod. The courage to walk away when others swarm. These small acts accumulate into a life less controlled by hidden proof. You won't win every battle. Sometimes you'll follow the crowd. Sometimes you'll be swept up. Sometimes you'll regret the choice. That's human. But every time you spot the trap and resist, even a little, you strengthen your shields. And over time, you become less a follower of illusions and more a chooser of paths. Imagine yourself tomorrow, scrolling your phone again. A trend flashes. A sale screams. A crowd cheers. You feel the pull, but instead of obeying, you smile. You see the strings. You pause. You ask. And then, for the first time, you choose. That's the quiet revolution. Not rejecting social proof entirely, it's too ingrained for that, but reclaiming your power inside it. Proof can sway, but it doesn't have to rule. And when you master these shields, something unexpected happens. You don't just protect yourself from manipulation, you begin to use proof consciously. You start shaping influence instead of being shaped by it. And that's where our journey takes us next. Into the final frontier of mind hacking, turning social proof into your own superpower. Imagine standing on a cliff overlooking a stormy sea. Waves crash violently below, the wind howls around you, and every instinct screams to step back. But you don't. You've learned to read the storm. You understand the currents. And now, instead of being battered by the waves, you're learning to surf them. That's the difference between being controlled by social proof and mastering it. All your life, you've been following cues. Likes, shares, headlines, friends, trends. Sometimes it led you right, sometimes it led you off a cliff. But what if you could flip the equation? What if, instead of reacting, you could direct the currents? That's the ultimate hack. Using social proof consciously to amplify your goals instead of letting it dictate them. The first step is understanding the mechanics of influence. Social proof works because humans evolved to trust consensus. It's fast, efficient, and mostly helpful. When a new person enters a group, they scan behavior for safety. We mimic gestures, follow leaders, adopt opinions because historically it increased survival. That wiring is still inside you, but now the stakes are different. It's attention, money, reputation. And the wiring can be flipped in your favor. Consider content creation. Influencers, marketers, and creators have one secret weapon: early proof. They seed their work with initial likes, shares, or comments, sometimes their own networks, sometimes small paid campaigns. This initial spark convinces the next wave of viewers that the content is worthy of attention. If you understand this, you can harness the same principle. Start small, demonstrate credibility, and let early validation attract wider engagement. Take storytelling. Humans are hardwired to respond to social proof in narrative form. A tale of a person overcoming struggle, validated by a crowd or community, triggers emotional resonance and imitation. You can use this consciously. Share your journey, highlight those who support you, showcase outcomes that others can replicate. You're no longer just telling a story, you're shaping the narrative of social proof itself. Another hack is curated demonstration. If you're launching a project or pitching an idea, first highlight microproofs, testimonials, small endorsements, initial usage metrics. Even a tiny set of credible examples acts as a magnet, drawing larger attention. Early adopters follow the lead, and the pattern snowballs. This is the same tactic that made viral campaigns explode. Proof attracts more proof. Now, you're the one placing the initial dominoes. Networking is another battlefield where social proof is gold. People naturally defer to perceived authority and consensus. By aligning yourself with respected figures, demonstrating early wins, and subtly broadcasting endorsements, you leverage social proof to open doors. But here's the subtlety. Authenticity matters. Your power comes not from fake numbers, but from real credibility amplified consciously. Artificial proof can backfire. Genuine proof, however, compounds exponentially. Then comes the skill of timing and visibility. Proof only works when it's seen. A quietly accomplished person might have 1,000 successes, but if nobody sees them, the influence is inert. That's why influencers, brands, and politicians invest heavily in showcasing achievements. To master the hack, you must present proof strategically, highlight key moments, display endorsements, and make accomplishments observable. When proof is visible and relevant, it multiplies impact. But there's a higher level, shaping norms intentionally. Social proof doesn't just indicate popularity. It defines what's normal. If you are an early adopter, a trendsetter, or a thought leader, Your behavior signals to others what is acceptable, desirable, or aspirational. When you consistently demonstrate desired behaviors, your audience begins to mimic them. You're no longer a passive participant, you're the architect of influence. Consider charity campaigns. A few strategically shared success stories can inspire thousands to donate. Early proof shows that others are contributing, motivating additional contributions. But if you understand the mechanics, you can create proof deliberately, share measurable impact, highlight contributors, and amplify testimonials. You engineer a cascade of social proof that drives real-world results. The hack also extends to personal habits. Want to build a skill, break a habit, or change your mindset? Make your progress visible to a trusted circle or public audience. When others witness your growth, their implicit proof reinforces your commitment. You're leveraging social proof inwardly and outwardly. Your brain sees the signal, the crowd validates it, and behavior strengthens. One of the most powerful aspects of mastering social proof is emotional alignment. Influence is strongest when proof resonates with core desires: belonging, recognition, security, status. By understanding the emotional landscape of your audience or yourself, you can position proof so it triggers intrinsic motivation. It's not coercion, it's alignment. The crowd isn't pushing you, it's showing you the path you already want to take. Yet, with great power comes responsibility. The same techniques used to manipulate can be used to uplift. Think of social campaigns that spread awareness, crowdfunding that funds life-saving projects, or viral initiatives that create positive behavioral change. When you wield social proof consciously and ethically, you're not just influencing, you're transforming outcomes for yourself and others. And here's the final layer: self-reflective amplification. Every choice you make, every action you highlight publicly, contributes to the social proof you generate. When done with awareness, this becomes a feedback loop of mastery. You experiment, you test, you measure impact, and you refine. Over time, you're not just writing social proof, you're conducting the orchestra. You choose which signals matter, which behaviors to model, and which norms to reinforce. The secret is subtlety. You don't need massive numbers to wield influence. Small, consistent, and authentic proof often outperforms flashy but shallow metrics. A single testimonial from a respected individual can outweigh thousands of hollow likes. A genuine endorsement can open doors that armies of fake followers cannot. Mastery comes from understanding the mechanics, not mimicking the loudest signals. Imagine a final scenario. You launch a new initiative. At first, it's small friends, colleagues, a few early supporters. You consciously amplify their engagement. Testimonials, shares, visible results. Slowly, the network notices. People follow. The momentum builds. The proof spreads. By the time the wider world sees it, it feels organic, inevitable, unstoppable. But you know the truth, you orchestrated it. You didn't fall prey to social proof, you directed it. And that is the ultimate hack. Social proof, once a force that subtly manipulated your choices, can become a superpower. It's no longer an invisible hand guiding you. It's a tool you control. You decide which signals to follow, which behaviors to model, which norms to shape. The waves of influence no longer batter you. You ride them, navigate them, and use them to propel yourself forward. The final truth is simple but profound. In a world of manufactured proof, orchestrated crowds, and invisible manipulators, mastery comes from awareness, strategy, and integrity. You can surrender to the currents, or you can learn to steer. Social proof doesn't have to be a trap. It can be your compass, your amplifier, your catalyst. And as you close this journey, one thing is clear: the choice is yours. Every like, every follow, every whisper of consensus is a tool. Will you let it control you, or will you become the architect of influence, the master of proof, the one who turns the invisible strings into your own superpower? If you found this journey into the hidden forces of social proof eye-opening, don't let it stop here. Hit that like button to show you're ready to take control of your mind. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever noticed yourself being influenced by the crowd? And if you know someone who needs to see this, share this video with them. Awareness is power, and the more we understand these hidden forces, the stronger we become.